Morning.
Good morning.
So, today's topic is a bit challenging for both of us. It's around affection and if you ask yourself, how are you around giving and receiving affection with your children?
Yeah.
What comes up for you?
Yeah, so maybe like Joe and I, when you think of the word mother or how you saw it kind of portrayed in the movies and things like that, the word mother, we think of, a person who can put a child on their lap and cuddle them and give them lots of love, give them a lot of time, be very thoughtful as about the kind of things they would like as gifts. All the ways that we give and receive affection. The word mother it kind of personifies kindness, gentleness, softness, and I probably didn't identify with any of those words and had really not even recognized that in myself when I became a mother. I hadn't even asked myself any of these questions. Hello, Doreen.
Hi, Doreen.
Good morning. What about you, Joe? Had you asked yourself any questions about?
No, well, it's interesting.
You do affection in life.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
When you start asking yourself these questions, like even if you recall when you were a child and how you did affection in your own home, and then going to friends' places and seeing how they did it. I grew up in Sydney, where there were lots of Greeks and Italians in my school, and I'd go to their home and they were very affectionate with one another, and even dads hugging their boys. And this was something that was a little bit unusual to me.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, it is. And a lot of my clients have even told me that it's not until they went to primary school that they even realised that mothers, hug their daughters. And that was the first time they'd seen something like that happen. So that was when they realised that could be a thing. So it really is very much, and if you're in a relationship with somebody else, it's a good idea to actually ask them what it was like for them as a child growing up. And especially if you're wanting affection from them and they're not able to give it to you in the way that you would like, then it will help for you to understand a little bit about their history, because we tend to think that everybody just grew up the same as us, and yet this particular one, affection, can have all sorts of things that get linked up to it when we're kids that create vows the other way. Like Joe's got a story about that. What happened with your daughter one day for you to realise you'd created a vow around certain things?
I bought like a gift, or bought some chocolate for her, and she came straight in for a hug, and I pushed her away because I didn't want a hug to be related to giving her chocolate, giving her a gift. And in that moment, it's so funny. Like there's so many memories that go on in here, and I can picture myself right now in the supermarket in that very moment, and where my hand actually pushed her away.
Yeah. So we were talking about this before we put the camera on, but when you go back and think about where that could have started, what do you find?
My parents in the beginning, when we were born, my parents were very poor, but then they came into some opportunities and earned some money and were able to be more free with their money and began buying gifts for us. But the gifts, they didn't, when I look back, like I can use the word soulless now, but I wouldn't have known that at the time, but I didn't feel any like connection through the gifts. I wanted to hang out with them and have fun with them, not just receive a gift for them. To me, when I look back now, I can see that I perceived that as just give the kids a toy or something and they'll leave us alone. They'll be over there by themselves and we can do our own things. Yet I would have preferred to not receive the gift and just hang out and have fun.
Yeah. So, Jo, so you would say it was anger, basically, would you? Anger around the way that the gifts were being given.
Yeah.
And then this shows up in a split second, or less than a split second, in the supermarket with her daughter when she's young, when you're a lot older, of course. And it's still dictating our behaviours around how we receive and show affection, or our stuff around gifts. So it really is so interesting how it keeps showing up.
In that moment, when I'm pushing her away, I'm believing that I am doing the very best thing for her. Because I don't want her to feel the pain that I felt.
Yes. And yet she has no idea what happened to us as kids, or why we're doing what we're doing, or what it's associated with. I mean, until we start asking the questions of ourselves and really exploring, and this is what we call the inner work, like going in and finding out, well, why did I react like that? What's going on inside of me? What is playing in my subconscious that creates a behavior like that with my children?
An automatic response.
And this whole thing around affection, because we have these ideas of how mothers should be, is not an easy one to often admit to. But I love to share about this because I think there are many other women out there who've grown up like us, where particularly our generation of women, where it's kind of cool to be more masculine, and we get more, I felt like I would get more love from my dad if I was more masculine. I also felt like I would get more love, and I was kind of the hero of my parents' life if I left them alone. So if I became more independent, and if I was able to play by myself, I got a lot of, I felt good about doing that. And so my denial of affection, I felt like I'm being the hero of my parents' life by not needing affection. So then, years later, when I go off to boarding school and people want me to give them hugs, and they're always coming up for a hug and all of this, and it was very confusing for me, because I kind of wasn't, I didn't judge myself, and not because I'd been the little hero of my own life when I was a kid, not needing affection, and now apparently I was upsetting people when I didn't really go in for the hug and want to give them a big hug, and and all
you're
of those
weird,
things.
like how
I was weird.
Yeah,
I was really weird. And then of course when I have my children, and I had these ideas of having these beautiful births, and of course I'd have pictured myself being able to hug my children and all of that. But a lot of that stuff came up when my first daughter was born, and I had no idea that this is kind of my association with affection. Like, it was really deep rooted in the first years of my childhood. And but I could, just leave my baby in as I've talked about on videos before. I actually went for a walk outside of the hospital and left my baby in the hospital. I feel like, how could I have done that now with what I know? And I would do it differently now. But back then I was just operating from a subconscious program that said, I'm actually keeping everyone happier by staying out of the way. And including my daughter, which just seems so strange, but I can see how that worked now, because I developed that program from when I was 2 years of age. And my mum even admitted to me, recently, that my dad was sick a lot when I was, and he needed a lot of attention. So she actually had to go to him a lot. And of course, I just learnt to look after myself from quite a young age. And again, I felt like I was doing them a favour doing that. So
yeah, and
I'm like, yay me.
And you mentioned earlier before, like our generation receiving accolades for being more masculine and being independent, able to do everything. And and when I had my first baby, well, I continued working. you know, with a really big pregnant belly, and
Yeah, and she was horse riding. So.
yeah, we were breaking in horses, and people would say, "Hey, you know, that could be a bit dangerous." I'm like not actually riding when I had a big belly, but I was for the first few months still riding young horses. And then when I had her, I was out of the hospital within 24 hours, and then back to work as soon as possible. Would take her to work. She'd be in the car asleep. She'd wake up, I'd wash my breast, feed her, and then take her off, drop her off to someone else. And while I went back to work, because work was number one.
Yeah, and again, this is something that you learnt growing up, Jo. So it's not until we start really questioning, do we want to show affection in a different way? And is that even possible? So, yes.
It is.
And the answer is yes, exactly. The answer is yes. It totally is possible, and we use the modality faster EFT to work with people. Doreen, who's watching, she'll give us a good big thumbs up. She's a practitioner as well, and we change so many things about how people relate to each other, and affection can be a huge one. Where, you know, there are people I've worked with, this can bring up some big stuff, because as we know, women especially, but also men, can have ways that affection became very inappropriate when they were a child. Sometimes they didn't know that as a child. It's not until they become an adult and they look back on things that happened to them, and then they realise, and all this shame and all this guilt can be associated with how they were shown affection by family members, and then that can have a really big impact on how they are with their partners especially, but also with their children. It really has an impact. So can that change? Yes, it can. And one of my other practitioner friends would just posted in a group saying that she'd worked with a couple who hadn't had sex in their marriage for a very long time. They'd been married for 7 years, and they worked on all the memories around affection and anything to do with sexual stuff that was inappropriate to them, or anything that was bringing up guilt and shame, and everything has started to change, to the point where the woman is saying, I think I can commit to once a week. And she would have never believed that that was possible. And I know for myself, doing all the tapping and that on myself, the way that I can interact with my children now and hug them and spend time with them. We have a family dinner now. We do all sorts of things that I wouldn't have prioritised had I not done this work on myself. And I know, Jo, we can say the same thing.
Loads of stories.
Yeah.
When I was 48, I went to a women's workshop that every Wednesday night for 2 years. And in the beginning, they wanted to hug me, and that made me very uncomfortable. I would have preferred a handshake. But slowly, and all the other women there easily hugged one another. And well, thank you. But then, slowly with their support and encouragement, and me recognising why I felt uncomfortable with hugs, and going back to those in my childhood and clearing up that stuff in my subconscious. Now I can go in for full body hugs.
Yeah.
Yay!
Jo and I even hug each other every time we meet, every time we leave. Things have changed for us.
Yeah.
So if you're feeling anything around your children, especially, of course, we work with mums, where maybe you even feel like you can hug one child more easily than another. And this can bring up a lot of guilt. And of course, that is always traced back to something in your own childhood. When you're coming, and the women that do our courses and come onto our calls, it's always about that. That's where there's never any judgment about how you are at the present moment right now. You're doing the best you can. But we can take you back, as Jo did. She goes back to some of those memories around gifts and how what perception she had, what we need to change, and what emotions we need to release. So Jo would have needed to release all the anger around her parents. You know, she's angry they don't spend any time with her, and now they've got money. It's like, shouldn't they spend more time with me now? And then it doesn't happen. It's just, oh, have a gift. So it's releasing that anger that will make a massive difference. And then now, if your children actually asked you for that, they thought they would like you to buy a gift for them, I'm sure you'd be able to do that.
Yeah, I could. But I also I would get nervous buying gifts because I felt so much pressure around buying gifts for them, and I rarely buy great ones because you know, I had this underlying anger going on inside me and resentment, all around gifts.
Yeah. And I know I work with mums where their little children, you know, they'll run away from them, and they would like them to give them a hug, or they're you know, hugging the dad all the time and really needing lots of affection, and maybe he's pushing them away. And all these kinds of things can really bring up triggers for you. But again, as I said before, it goes back to what happened to you in your experience as a child, as a young teenager, as a young adult. All these experiences up until yesterday impact how you give and receive affection. So you can change it. If you want to change it, it's actually really easy, and you can totally change your life doing this.
And this is why we say our kids are our greatest teachers, because when something happens like this and you feel triggered inside, it's your kids giving you an opportunity to clear some stuff up and from your past and step into a happier life.
Yeah.
So, like for example, if you're an only child and you have 3 children and they're fighting, and you get very, very triggered when they're fighting, or even when they're showing affection to one another, and if you look back to your own childhood and you missed out on that, then that's why what you're seeing and what you're feeling in that moment, it's not about them, it's about what's going on inside you.
Yes. It totally is. So the biggest message we really wanted to get across this morning is that it can change. If you've got triggers around how you give and receive affection, you really can totally change how you do that in life. And life improves with more affection. In fact, that was something I was going to look up, is that there are a lot of studies out there that show actually how much giving lots of affection to children and like having lots of hugs and all of those things in a really fun and obviously mutual consenting way,
healthy,
always mutually consenting and healthy way, is just a beautiful, like, I really do believe that a lot of the even autoimmune diseases, so many of the things that we have these days would be solved by children receiving and giving lots and lots of affection, especially as real little ones, and we, you know, so if you feel like you could change this, then learning how to tap on yourself, doing that is a really, really cool way to just be more connected and that with your kids.
And the first step, like today, if you're watching this today, just notice how you're feeling inside throughout your day today when certain things happen, when you see people out in public hugging one another, and notice whether you're really comfortable with it or you feel a little bit strange inside.
And then you can tap.
That's your golden opportunities.
Let it go.
They're around everywhere.
If it triggers you, you can let it go. Let it go. Yeah. And really go towards what your desire is for how you want to have affection in your life. Yeah.
Cool. Thanks for joining us.
Yes, thank you.
And we'll see you again next Wednesday.
Thanks, Doreen. Thanks, Kristen.
Bye.
See you. Bye.